The bread is still warm. You can smell it from the street, wheat and olive oil and something faintly charred at the crust, the smell of a city that woke up this morning exactly the same way it woke up every morning for the last 300 years. The bakery on your left has already pulled its first loaves. The stone counter is dusted white with flour. A price is scratched into the plaster beside the door in numbers you almost recognize. The street beneath your feet is not dirt, it is stone, large, flat, volcanic basalt blocks worn smooth by cartwheels and sandals, and the particular rhythm of 11,000 people who have nowhere urgent to be. The ruts carved by generations of wagon wheels run deep enough to catch your boot. This city is old. This city has been here forever. Above the roofline to the north, something is different about the sky. Not wrong exactly, just different. A column of something rising from the peak of the mountain that has always stood there, that has always been simply part of the view, that no one living in this city has ever seen do anything but sit and be green and be permanent and be home. Nobody on this street is looking at it. There is a room 2 streets from here that will be found perfectly preserved, mid-meal, cups still on the table, nearly 2,000 years from now. You are about to walk through it. They have 11 hours, and not one of them knows it. Pompeii, Roman Italy, August 24th, 79 AD, approximately 9 in the morning. What you are about to walk through is a reconstruction built from the most complete archaeological record of daily Roman life ever recovered from the ground. 4 sources make this possible in a way no other ancient city can match. The first is the excavation record itself, 250 years of continuous digging begun in 1748 and still producing new data today. The Great Pompeii Project, funded by the European Union, has been systematically uncovering sections of the city that earlier digs missed entirely. As recently as 2020, a Thermopolium was found with food residue still chemically identifiable inside the serving vessels. In 2021, a ceremonial chariot was recovered intact. The city is still giving things back. The second is Pliny the Younger, a 17-year-old boy staying with his uncle across the bay in Misenum on the morning of August 24, 79 AD, who watched the eruption from a distance and survived to write 2 letters to the historian Tacitus describing exactly what he saw, hour by hour, with the precision of someone who understood he was witnessing something that needed to be recorded correctly. The third is the science of volcanology, modern analysis of ash deposits, pyroclastic surge patterns, and thermal data that have allowed researchers to reconstruct the eruption sequence almost minute by minute. And the fourth, the one that makes everything else feel different, are the 1,150 plaster casts recovered from the ash. Not statues, not representations, the actual voids left by human bodies in the hardened volcanic material, filled with plaster in the 19th century, preserving posture, clothing, expression, and final moment with an accuracy that no sculptor has ever captured, because no sculptor was trying to capture what these casts capture. This reconstruction is built on all of it. If you want to keep walking through history's most devastating final hours, subscribe right now and hit the bell. Every reconstruction on this channel goes deeper than the last. And before we go any further, drop a comment. If you could spend 1 hour inside any ancient city at its absolute peak before anything went wrong, which city would you choose? I read every answer. Now, the sun is up. The city is alive. Walk with me. You enter through the Herculaneum gate, the northwestern entrance, the one the road from Naples uses, the one that sees the most traffic on a market day in August when the summer heat has been building for weeks and the population has swelled with visitors and traders and the particular restlessness that comes with a city in its season. The gate is 3 arched openings, the wide central arch for carts, the 2 narrower flanking arches for pedestrians.
The stone at shoulder height on both sides of the pedestrian arches is worn to a shine, smoothed by the hands of every person who has passed here for 3 centuries, steadying themselves over the threshold, adjusting their load, pausing for a half-second before the city swallows them. Outside the walls, the road is lined with tombs. This is not morbid, this is Roman urban planning operating exactly intended. The dead are buried outside the city walls by law. The Via dei Sepolcri, the Street of Tombs, runs for nearly half a kilometer before you reach the gate, and the monuments along it range from simple stone markers to elaborate marble facades with portrait busts and inscriptions that read less like epitaphs and more like campaign posters. To the memory of Nevalia Tyche, freed woman who built this monument for herself and her family. Marcus Porcius, Aedile, Duumvir, Quinquennial, the people of Pompeii honor him. The tombs face the road deliberately. Every person entering or leaving Pompeii passes the names of the dead, memory as infrastructure, reputation as architecture. In Pompeii, you do not escape your name even after you are gone. You step through the gate, the city opens. And here is the thing that stops every modern visitor, every archaeologist, every person who has ever read about Pompeii and then actually stood in what remains of it. This is not a primitive place. The streets have raised pavements, stone sidewalks elevated above the road surface so pedestrians stay out of the drainage channel that runs down the center of every major thoroughfare. At intersections, large stepping stones are set at cartwheel width precisely so that foot traffic can cross without stepping into the drainage flow. The city has running water, a pressurized aqueduct system, the Castellum Aquae, feeding public fountains at regular intervals throughout every neighborhood, private homes with their own water connections, and the Thermopolia, the fast food counters that line every commercial street and require a continuous water supply to function. Pompeii has street lighting, it has a functioning sewer system, it has at least 2 theaters, an amphitheater that seats 20,000 people, multiple bath complexes, a gym, temples to half a dozen deities, a market hall, and a forum that functions simultaneously as courthouse, commercial exchange, political arena, and political arena. And it has graffiti everywhere. On every wall of every street, in red and black paint, in scratched plaster, in charcoal, in ink, election endorsements. The fruit sellers ask you to vote for Marcus Hulconius Priscus as Duumvir. Love declarations, Successus loves Iris. Insults, Celadus the Thracis gladiator makes the girls sigh. Complaints, I am amazed, O wall, that you have not fallen in ruins, since you support the tedious writings of so many scribblers. This city is completely, uncomplicatedly, loudly, messily, politically, romantically alive. The Forum of Pompeii is not a ruin this morning. It is a working, civic space, and it is running at full capacity on an August Tuesday in the middle of market season. The Temple of Jupiter at the northern end is receiving morning supplicants, incense smoke rising into the air from the altar into air that is already warm and heavy with the smell of the bay to the west. The basilica on the western side is full, lawyers, creditors, magistrates, the perpetual human theater of Roman legal argument that begins at first light and does not stop until the light fails. Along the southern colonnade, market stalls have been set up since before dawn. Garum is selling from sealed terracotta vessels, the fermented fish sauce that flavors everything in the Roman diet, the smell of which reaches you about 40 feet before you reach the stalls. Beside the garum, olive oil in tall amphoras. Beside the oil, cloth in colors that catch the morning light, the dyes expensive, the display deliberate, the merchant watching every passing face for the particular expression of someone who wants something they haven't admitted yet. At the northern end of the forum, between the columns of the Temple of Jupiter, Mount Vesuvius is perfectly framed. It has always been framed this way. The temple was built to align with it, or the alignment was noticed after the temple was built, and the fact was simply absorbed into the visual grammar of the city. Either way, every person who has stood in this forum for 3 centuries and looked north has seen the mountain between the columns. It is as much a part of the forum's architecture as the columns themselves. The mountain is producing a column of something this morning, rising straight up in the still August air, spreading at the top like the canopy of a pine tree. Pliny the Younger will use exactly that comparison in the letter he writes about this morning. A pine tree of smoke and ash, the trunk rising straight and the canopy spreading in the still air above the summit. In the forum, no one is looking at it. They have seen smoke from this mountain before. Small plumes, nothing serious. The earth shakes here sometimes. It shook badly in 62 AD, badly enough to damage the Temple of Jupiter, which is still being repaired. The Pompeians have lived alongside this mountain their entire
The plaster casts of Pompeii are not statues. This is the thing that takes a moment to fully arrive. When Giuseppe Fiorelli developed the technique in 1863, pouring liquid plaster into the voids he found in the hardened ash during excavation, he was not creating sculptures. He was not making art. He was not reconstructing what people looked like. He was finding the spaces where people had been. The ash fell on Pompeii in layers over 18 hours. It buried the city gradually at first, pumice stones raining from the column above, accumulating on rooftops, filling streets, piling against doors. And then, in the early afternoon, the column collapsed. What came next was not ash in the gentle sense. It was a pyroclastic surge, a superheated avalanche of gas and volcanic material moving at 100 kilometers per hour, temperature reaching 300 degrees Celsius, covering the distance from the summit to the city in minutes. Death, when it came, was not slow. The bodies of the dead were buried under the accumulating ash and pumice. Over the following centuries, the organic material, flesh, bone, clothing, wood, decomposed inside the hardening volcanic casing. What remained centuries later, when Fiorelli began excavating in earnest, were hollow spaces, perfect negatives, the exact interior shape of a human being in the last position they ever occupied, preserved in volcanic stone with a fidelity that no deliberate sculptor has ever matched, because Fiorelli was not sculpting. He was listening to what the ash had kept. The casts show people who covered their faces with their hands, who curled toward each other in doorways, who lay down with their arms over their heads as if that could be enough, who died holding their children in a position so instinctive and so recognizable that every person who has ever stood in front of those casts in the Pompeii Archaeological Museum has understood immediately, without being told, what they are looking at. A mother, a child, the last thing either of them did. One cast, found in the Villa of the Mysteries on the western edge of the city, is a man on his side, one hand pressed flat against the ground, his head turned to the right. The volcanologists who analyzed the thermal data from the pyroclastic surge that reached this part of Pompeii determined that lethal temperature arrived faster than the nervous system could process it. He did not suffer long. What the posture represents is not a conscious act. It is the body's last involuntary movement, a reflex so deep it operates without instruction, the oldest thing in the human animal, the part of us that tries to get up even when getting up is no longer possible. He was trying anyway. This is the moment that reframes every ordinary thing you walked through this morning. The warm bread, it was someone's breakfast. The election signs in fresh red paint, someone painted them last night, believing the vote mattered, believing there would be a vote. The cups on the Thermopolium counter, they are still there.
They are still there right now in the sense that matters. The moment of their placement is permanent in a way that no palace and no monument and no empire has ever managed to be permanent. The morning is frozen. Not metaphorically, the morning is frozen in volcanic stone at a temperature that stopped time itself. The dog on the chain. No name, no rescue. Still there. They were not extras in a historical catastrophe. They were people who had rent to pay, and favorite seats at the counter, and arguments they hadn't finished, and things they meant to do tomorrow. The volcano did not distinguish between them. It simply arrived, and the ordinary morning became the thing that lasted. The ash didn't bury a ruin, it buried a Tuesday. Here is the one uncertainty this reconstruction must speak out loud, because to omit it would be to betray the people it is trying to honor. We do not know exactly what time the pyroclastic surge reached the city. Pliny the Younger's account, the volcanic analysis, and the distribution of the casts give us a window, somewhere between early and mid-afternoon for the first surge, with subsequent surges through the evening and night completing the burial. But the exact minute the temperature on the Via dell'Abbondanza reached 300 degrees Celsius, the exact moment the Thermopolium counter went cold, the exact second the dog stopped pulling at the chain, we do not know. What we know is that it was fast, faster than anyone who stayed believed it would be. At approximately 1 in the afternoon, the eruption column collapses. 33 kilometers of ash and gas, falling. The pyroclastic surge reaches the city in minutes. It is not fire in the way the word suggests, not flame, not lava, not the slow creeping destruction of a house fire that leaves time to run. It is heat and pressure, moving faster than a human being can think about what is happening. The forum empties, or it doesn't. The Thermopolium counter goes cold. The breakfast cups stay exactly where they were placed. The election signs on the Via dell'Abbondanza stop meaning anything. The dog cannot move. The bread in the bakery, still warm 2 hours ago, becomes the oldest bread in the world. The ash falls for 18 hours after the surge. When it stops, Pompeii is under 4 to 6 meters of volcanic material. The streets are gone. The rooftops are gone. The fountains are buried. The graffiti is buried. The forum is buried. The temple of Jupiter is buried. The dog, the cups, the mosaic with the warning in the house no one can enter anymore. The mountain is a different shape now. It lost its peak in the eruption. The mountain that the Pompeians knew, the green, vine-covered, familiar, useful mountain that produced their wine and framed their forum and stood at the northern end of their world like a permanent fixture, is gone. What replaced it is lower, wider, and has a crater at its summit. The mountain looks like something that has done something. Vesuvius has never looked permanent again. Rome responds. The Emperor Titus, who came to power the year before and has already dealt with the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and a devastating fire in Rome, dispatches aid to the Campania region. Relief funds are allocated. Former consuls are sent to organize assistance. And then Pompeii is not rebuilt. No excavation, no reclamation, no systematic recovery of the buried city. The ash is 4 to 6 meters deep, and nobody knows where to begin. And there is, perhaps, underneath all the practical reasoning, something in the human response to that kind of totality that understands certain losses should be left where they fell. The city's name survives in records. References appear in Roman documents for a generation after the eruption, and then the references stop. The city is simply gone. The survivors carry it in memory, and then they die, and then their children carry a second-hand version, and then their children carry nothing, and within a century, the location of Pompeii is approximate even to the people who live above it. But the graffiti survives. Everything else, the rooftops, the frescoes, the wooden furniture, the cloth, the food on the counter, everything organic and temporary and fragile, loses the long argument with time. But the graffiti pressed into plaster walls is protected by the same ash that buried it, and when the excavators reach it 17 centuries later, it is still there, readable, specific, human. Successus loves Iris, still there. I am amazed, O wall, that you have not fallen in ruins, since you support the tedious writings of so many scribblers. Still there. Celadas, the Thrace, makes the girls sigh. Still there. The most informal, most throwaway writing in the ancient world, scrawled by people who had no idea they were writing for anyone other than the next person to walk past that particular wall, preserved more completely than the literature of emperors, more completely than the official records of the city's magistrates, more completely than almost anything that was meant to last. The things that were never meant to last. Those are the things that lasted. In 1748, a Spanish military engineer named Roque Joaquín de Alcubierre began digging in a field near a small Italian town, following a rumor about ancient artifacts buried somewhere below the farmland. He found a city. Not ruins in the way the word usually means, not scattered columns and foundation outlines, and the vague impression of what something used to be. A city with walls standing to head height, with frescoes still holding their color after 17 centuries in the dark, with bread in the bakery ovens, carbonized but intact, the shape of the loaves preserved, with a dog on a chain, with cups on the counter, with Successus loves Iris on a wall that had not seen daylight in 1,669 years. The excavations have never fully stopped. The great Pompeii